Hi there. I have a guest with me. It's Elias from Kantega. Hi, Elias.
Hi, Martin. There was a study that said that 1 in 4 employees still have access 1 month after they quit. And that is a huge vector for an insider attack. They told us that they had trouble with their Jira instance being really slow, and they figured out that the reason why was that they had 1 million JSM customers lying in their user database. We want the people who are supposed to have access to stuff and no one else.
Thanks for being with me. We're looking at stuff that is interesting for customers. What is it?
Yeah, so what we're working on in Kantega SSO has everything to do with cybersecurity, specifically identity and access management. And what that means is that we want the people who are supposed to have access to stuff and no one else. So making sure that we enable work by reducing risk so that only the people who are supposed to do the work can do the work. So that's one of our goals.
Well, that's driving philosophical questions about default to closed or default to open. Atlassian is actually a company that is helping customers a lot to have open documentation. If you create something on Confluence, it's and so is that all like protected stuff then that you're looking at, or?
Not necessarily, but for us, I think different organizations have a different security posture. For some, they're really strict. Security is really important. Everything is sensitive. For other organizations, they're more relaxed, like I say. They will have more openness. But in any case, you just want as much openness as necessary. So from our perspective, we want to teach our customers to not be more open than you have to, because that exposes you to some risk. And we want to reduce risk. That's sort of our philosophy.
Okay, so you brought a couple of use cases that we can talk about. What are those?
That's right. So one of the biggest problems that we see among our customers is that users have access after they quit, for example. So after you quit a company, many employees, I think there was a study that said that 1 in 4 employees still have access 1 month after they quit. And that is a huge vector for an insider attack. For example, an employee was fired, they can be angry, they can be annoyed, and then suddenly they could decide to do a cyber attack and destroy your work, destroy resources, or maybe leak stuff, you know. So just making sure that you have I call it hygiene in your user database. That's one of the things that we have been thinking about.
So the use case would basically be offboarding.
That's right.
And a way to efficiently strip away access for people. Okay. And that would be one use case, right?
That's right. And doing this task is actually not as easy as it sounds. Because on Atlassian Cloud, you have several kinds of users that have several different properties. And that's what we can have a look at in one of our apps, where we have been collaborating with our customers to try to solve this, no matter if you have a managed user or an unmanaged user. So we can take a look at that maybe.
Yeah. How about you show us?
So this is our User Cleanup and Deactivation app. We have the different video that goes into the basics of it. So our app is analyzing the user base in your cloud site, and it monitors access, who has been logging in, who has been active in the instance, and it does it for Jira, JSM, and also the Confluence.
So low
activity.
Usage users, what is that?
Yeah, so that's something that can be defined by a company policy, but essentially in our setup, this is users who haven't interacted with the product for more than 2 weeks. So they've been away for 2 weeks.
As soon as they log in, they become green then?
That's right. Then they jump back into the green field over here. So and the point here is,
even if I'm inactive for 2 years and then jump in, I'm still an active user then.
Yeah, but here is where we come in. So you can make sure that you configure a schedule so that the inactive users are removed from product access. So and that way you can serve the purpose that if someone was kicked out, they will by default be also kicked out of Confluence and Jira within the time limit that you set in your schedule. So so you'll just automatically remove access, and Then what we're also working on is for people to get back in. For example, if you were on a leave, if you were on pregnancy leave or something like that, then you need to get back when you get back to work. So that's also cases we're thinking about, but those are more edge cases. So now we're covering sort of the case where a customer or a user is leaving the instance. So the first use case we have that is tricky is the one with unmanaged users, because typically when a company has set up a Atlassian Cloud and they're of a certain size, they're using an identity provider. So then typically the users
like
are
Google
managed.
or Microsoft.
Google,
or
Microsoft, Okta, and then typically they have claimed a email domain. So everyone's user email ends with, in our case, Kantega SSO.dev, and then it will be company.com, whatever. And all these users are managed centrally in the identity provider. And that means that their access is managed over there. However, you do also have consultants, contractors, maybe summer students who are more of guest accounts, and they will be created directly into your instance and they will not be managed. So even though your company might have a policy to automatically offboard users from the IDP, the external users, they will not be touched by that policy. So they will just be left there. So that's a risk where we're trying to cover. So using
and how do you do that?
So how you do that, that's actually up to you. You can set up a schedule. For example, if someone, let's say you have a contractor which has a contract for 6 months, then you can already set up a schedule over here that says the users who belong to contractor A, they will be automatically offboarded in 6 months' time from now.
Okay.
Or you can set up a default thing that removes everyone who hasn't been active on the product for the last 20 days.
And by removing, do you mean deactivating the user, or are you actually deleting it, or?
That's a good question. So this is also
because maybe it's an error and I want to reactivate the user and then.
Exactly. So you can deactivate managed users actually, but for removing product access, then it's typically that you remove them from the licensing group. So Jira software users. But you can also, if you're more careful, you can just add them to a list, and then you will get a view over the users. Okay. You get a report. These users haven't been active, and then you can make a conscious decision instead. And so this will happen automatically for the unmanaged users, which are the contractors, summer students, externals. So that's that allows you to enforce your company policy also for those users who aren't centrally managed, because centrally you probably have some policy configured in the Google or Microsoft Cloud, which will work, but it will not work for these particular users. So that's one of the posts that we cover. But there's another problem, which we have also been working on closely with our customers, and that is how do you actually, let's say that the user doesn't quit, but let's say that a user has transferred within the company and they no longer use this Jira site. They have been transferred to a different team or whatever, and they have no need to have access to this Jira anymore. Then you have a problem because the user is centrally managed in the IDP. So Jira doesn't, or the IDP doesn't know that this user doesn't need Jira anymore. And that's where we do an analysis locally in Jira, and we can tell the identity provider that, hey, this user can be removed from product access on this Jira site. So that's a case that's important because the source of truth is the identity provider. So the identity provider tells Jira, here are the users, here are their accesses. But now we can, in this case, we can produce a file. So that's how it works for Azure AD. You export the cleanup. In this case, there's no file, but I've created a default file for us. So you will get a CSV file with all the users that have been inactive. So they are supposed to be removed from the IDP. And then you send this file to your IDP team, your Azure Entra team, and they can go into the group in question, and then they can do a bulk operation, and they can remove members. So this could be 1,000 users that are inactive. And then they just...
And you already have the right format there. Or...
Yeah, and then we just upload the CSV file, and then this will just automatically happen. And then the next time there's a sync event towards Jira, those users will have been removed. So that's then we have drawn the full circle. And that's important to have like the circular dependency, because the IDP has then been informed that these users are now removed from this Confluence or this Jira. So, and the reason why we're using a file like this is also for the organization to stay in control of what's happening, because Microsoft, Entra ID, and Google do have APIs, but it's also risky to use those APIs. If you do it fully automatically, then suddenly, if something happens by accident, it's a lot harder to catch. But now, when you have a file,
and you're doing it consciously, kind of like...
That's right, because this is an important decision, and then you have the human in the loop.
Do you ping the admin somehow via email or something like, oh, we have this review list and it has 20 people on, or?
That's on our list of things we're trying to solve, because currently we have a runs on Atlassian app, and that means that you can't send email, but we're trying to solve this by having a different application that does emails, and that application can speak with this application. So, so that way you can have a trigger that says send email, and then that's
so right now you have to go in and
now you have to send email yourself, because the app is running in a sandbox, but this is on a roadmap to also solve the email sending. So, and this is also useful for getting the report that when a schedule happened and you run a cleanup on your Jira, then you can send a report to the appropriate managers, and they can see that, okay, this is what happened for the last month. So,
okay, let's go back a little bit. I understand that. Or hold on, you had another use case with JSM, right? Do you want to show that real quick as well? Or?
Sure, I can show that. So
I would want some time to talk about why deactivating users and so on, but let's see things first and then...
Sure, let's see. So the last one is a bit different, because that's on mostly on data center currently. We're working on also achieving this on cloud, but it's most relevant, I think, for DC. So we'll see if I'm able to connect to our DC test instance. So we had a customer running a Jira data center, and they've been running for many, many years. And they told us that they had trouble with their Jira instance being really slow, and they figured out that the reason why was that they had 1 million JSM customers lying in their user database. And many of those customers haven't been a customer for years and years and years. So you should be able to not only deactivate them, but actually delete them from the user directories and from the user database. So that's one of the things that we have been working on with our data center version of the User Cleanup app, because on DC you have more options to you can do more powerful things within the system, like doing a hard delete is easier on DC than cloud. So then when you run a cleanup, it looks quite similar to the cloud app. But now you can have JSM external users, and what you basically can do, it's a bit of a trickery, but you can move users to a separate directory. So you make sure that it's only these users who are supposed to be cleaned, and then you delete the directory, and all the users are gone. So that way you can make sure that your user database goes from having 1 million unnecessary users to only the 1,000 that matters. And this is more of a performance thing, but it's also useful to have like a otherwise the customer accounts are kind of special. They're kind of hidden ghost users in a sense. So this is a way to touch them.
Let's talk a little bit about why we're doing this after all. Why would I want to deactivate delete users as a customer?
So I think that this is something you want to do to have a good security posture. From where we come from, we believe in having something that feels safe and secure. But you can also be motivated by having a certification, for example. If you're a financial institution, you have to comply with DORA compliance. And you have other companies in healthcare doing HIPAA compliance. And those compliances often require you to have a proper offboarding and onboarding routine. And that includes
no
Jira.
Unauthorized access.
No unauthorized access. And to enforce this, you have to make sure that the dormant users, for example, the contractors that are not managed centrally, they must also be moved and lose access. And this is what we're trying to help achieve. We're looking at the compliance programs that are out there, and we're trying to make sure that companies can enforce their policies so they can stay compliant. That's sort of Yeah, that's one of the main
And then there's
factors.
money, right?
Then there's money as well. Yeah, that's a really great bonus with this, because you can also recognize that you don't have a business case for all these users to actually have a Jira license, because you can see that, oh, it turns out that 300 out of our 1,000 users, they have a Jira license, but they actually don't use Jira at all. They did something else. Who knows what they did, like Post-its?
Yeah.
I don't know, but they actually don't have a business case to have Jira currently. And then as an admin, you can be strict and tell the users that you have to use Jira, otherwise you're gone.
Yeah.
Then you'll lose your access. So that's a policy you can enforce as an admin using our tools.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about CBET apps and what we're doing. Is there any app that you're using that we produce?
Yeah, so I use Draw.io a lot.
Okay.
I'm a software engineer, and I'm also a software architect. And especially to empty my brain about architecture, trying to visualize flows, trying to visualize dependencies between things, then my default is to create a Draw.io and have it straight into Confluence, which is our knowledge base and our internal documentation. So that all works great for me. Yeah.
Have you tried Confluence Whiteboards?
I've not tried Confluence Whiteboards, but I would love to hear more about it. So can you tell me?
Oh no, so we're producing Draw. I was thinking like maybe as a lesson pushing that it's a very simple tool.
Yeah.
And what we see with our customers is that the overlap of Confluence Whiteboards and Draw.io is very minimal.
Okay.
But I would be interested if you had tried it out,
right.
If you had found use cases that you could not, but you're happy with Draw.io and
that's right.
Didn't even try to switch yet. That's
no,
awesome.
No. For me, it's a tool that I know. I've also used it. I used it also because it's the same tool that exists in the Google space and so on. It's a tool that I was familiar with for many years. So for me, I'm comfortable using the options I have within there, and it's also powerful, and I like a powerful tool. And I can imagine that a whiteboarding solution is maybe useful for more shorter term, high-speed sketching. But I think when you want a quality sketch, when you want to do work that matters more, I think that using Draw.io is where I would go.
Cool. Elias, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Martin.
Awesome.